Hi everyone, it's Miss Brenner. I'm here to go over some language arts notes, specifically about the literary term irony. Our objectives for today are that students will be able to define irony, and students will be able to identify the three kinds of irony. With that in mind, please make sure that you are taking notes either on paper or on a Google Docs, that way you can easily find them in the future. Also, we will be continuing to use Edpuzzle to answer questions about irony and to reflect on our notes today. We will also be pausing Edpuzzle occasionally to use YouTube for example videos. Let's get started. Let's start off with talking about the definition of irony. Irony is the opposite of what is expected. It's a contradiction between what happens and what you expected to happen. The purpose of irony is often used to add suspense and interest to a story. It is also used to keep readers thinking about the moral of the story. Irony would be our major category, but there are three subcategories of irony. These are verbal irony, situational irony, and dramatic irony. Let's start off with verbal irony. This is the simplest type of irony. You use it every day when you say one thing, but you really mean the opposite. It has a tone of sarcasm to it. Let's look at some examples of verbal irony. Maybe when you go to gym class, you might say something like, "The locker room smells really good," when actually you mean the opposite. Maybe you mean that the locker room kind of smells like dirty socks. Awesome. Another homework packet. You might say something like that when you're using verbal irony to express your frustration with getting another homework packet when you really wanted to go home and play video games. As your teacher is signing detention forms for students who did not complete their homework, she says in an irritated voice, "I just love when students don't do their homework." Maybe you've heard these things before, and they would all be considered verbal irony. We're now going to pause this video and go and see a YouTube clip that goes over verbal irony in a little bit more depth. When we come back, I'd like you to answer questions in Edpuzzle pertaining to the video. Particularly, what are three main things from the video that you gained knowledge about that helped you to understand verbal irony better? Alrighty guys, we're going to continue on. We're now going to talk about situational irony. This occurs when a situation turns out to be the opposite of what you thought it would be. Some examples of situational irony would be the teacher's daughter is a high school dropout, the chef won't eat his or her own cooking, the barber always needs a haircut himself, or Bill Gates uses an Apple computer. All of these situations are pretty much the opposite of what you would expect. Especially, Bill Gates is the company owner for Microsoft. He probably should be using his own device rather than an Apple computer. We're now going to pause and watch a video clip about situational irony to understand it with a better depth of the term. With that in mind, we're going to pause, go to YouTube, and watch that clip. When we come back, I'd like you to tell me three things that you've gained a deeper understanding about involving situational irony. We're now going to talk about dramatic irony, when the reader understands more about the events of a story than a character does. This is used to engage the audience and keep them actively involved in the storyline. Let's look at some examples. Examples of dramatic irony. Tim's parents are proud of the A he got on the test, but we know he cheated. Alex writes a love poem to Judy, but we know that Judy loves Devin. These are both examples of dramatic irony. So, we know something that the characters that are receiving the actions don't know. We're now going to go look at a video clip. When we come back, I'd like you to tell me three things that you learned about dramatic irony. Let's have a review. Irony is a kind of a surprise. It is the difference between what is expected to happen and what actually does happen. There are three different types of irony: verbal, situational, and dramatic. I'd like you to tell me what verbal, situational, and dramatic irony are in the Ed Puzzle. Alrighty guys, that is the end of our notes for today. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.